All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to step into the shoes of a private investigator to really understand infidelity. But forget everything you've seen in the movies. We are breaking down the 7 subtle signs that the pros always look for, based on tons of real-world cases.
So, first things first. Real-life investigation is not about some dramatic confrontation in a thunderstorm. No way. It's all about noticing the small, almost quiet changes in someone's routine and behavior that, when you start adding them up, they tell a much bigger story.
So if it's not about that one big gotcha moment, then what are they actually looking for? What are the real tangible clues that keep popping up in these cases? What does a professional investigator see that the rest of us might just brush off?
And that brings us to what is probably the single most important rule in this whole process. It's about the pattern. Investigators are looking for a cluster of signs. Look, anyone can work late once, right? Or buy a new shirt. But when you see several new behaviors all showing up around the same time, well, that's when a professional really starts paying attention. And that leads us right to the heart of an investigator's playbook. After years and years in the field, they've pretty much nailed down 7 key red flags. These are the things that show up over and over again, and they really form the bedrock of an infidelity investigation. So let's break them down one by one.
In our world today, where do you think the investigation almost always kicks off? Yep, right here. Our digital devices. They are an absolute treasure trove of information, and honestly, they're often the first place where the story starts to unravel. Now, the key here isn't that someone wants privacy. Everybody wants privacy. It's about a sudden, really dramatic shift. The phone that was always just sitting on the kitchen counter is now being guarded like it's Fort Knox. That abrupt change, that's sign number 1. And this is what that shift actually looks like in the real world. We're talking about brand new passwords out of nowhere, hushed phone calls taken in another room, or that classic move of always putting the phone screen down. Oh, and a constantly cleared search history? That's a huge one. It's a whole new pattern of hiding things where one never existed before.
Okay, so these secret behaviors, they have real-world consequences. Affairs don't just happen in the digital space. They exist in the physical world, and you know what that means? They cost money, and they take up time. And both of those things leave behind a very real, very trackable footprint.
It's really just simple logic. Dinners out, gifts, maybe even hotel rooms. All of that costs money. A good investigator knows that taking a deep dive into the bank statements and credit card bills can uncover a whole bunch of activities that just don't match the story someone's telling.
And look how specific these clues can be. It could be a charge from a restaurant they swear they've never been to, a jewelry purchase that you definitely never received, or lots of vague cash withdrawals from an ATM. These are literally the financial breadcrumbs that investigators are trained to follow. And this is the other side of that logistical coin: time. All of a sudden, a schedule that was once totally predictable is now just chaotic. You start seeing new, frequent absences from home, and this is the important part. They're always vaguely explained. An investigator looks at these kinds of excuses with a really critical eye. Is working late suddenly an every night thing? Are the details of that business trip kind of fuzzy, or do they keep changing? Does the amount of time they're spending on this new hobby seem, a little excessive? It's all about questioning the story when it just stops adding up.
All right, so let's shift gears from the practical stuff to the personal. This next set of signs is all about changes in a person's behavior, their appearance, and their emotional state. It's about a fundamental shift from who they used to be in the relationship.
Now, this isn't about someone just deciding to get healthy. We're talking about a sudden, almost obsessive focus on their appearance that just seems to come out of absolutely nowhere. A brand new wardrobe, a sudden addiction to the gym, new cologne, especially when it feels like they're dressing up for an audience and that audience isn't you. This can be one of the most painful signs of all. It's that feeling that your partner is physically in the room, but they're not really there with you. The connection just starts to fizzle out, conversations get really shallow, and that intimacy that used to define your relationship just evaporates.
And here's what that distance actually looks like day to day. They stop asking you about your day. They start avoiding eye contact. All that casual affection, like a hand on your back, just disappears. This feeling of distance is really just a collection of these small, observable moments.
Okay, now for sign number 6, and this one is a really fascinating piece of psychology. It's defensiveness and projection. A person who's feeling guilty will often become incredibly defensive. They might start picking fights over nothing, maybe to justify spending time away. Or, and this is a classic, they'll start accusing you of doing the very thing that they're guilty of.
I mean, this is a perfect example of how that works. A totally reasonable question like, "Where were you so late?" isn't met with an answer. It's met with an attack. "Why are you so controlling?" They completely flip the script on you, turning your valid concern into an accusation. It's a seriously powerful way to deflect.
So, we've looked at the digital trail, the money and time trail, and the personal shifts. The final, and honestly the most critical step for any investigator is to pull back and see how all these little individual dots connect to form the bigger picture.
And this brings us right to the seventh and final sign, which, funny enough, isn't a new behavior at all. It's the fact that all the other signs are happening at the same time. It's the new gym habit, plus the secret phone calls, plus the weird credit card bills, plus the emotional distance. It's the pattern of disruption itself.
So here's the absolute bottom line. Stress can explain why someone is distant. A big project at work can explain working late. But can stress explain the secret phone, the new wardrobe, and the unexplained hotel charges all at once? It's highly unlikely. And that's the logic that an investigator relies on. So this gives you a really clear way to think about all this objectively. First, you notice a change. Then, you look for a pattern instead of getting hung up on one single thing. You have to actively consider other reasonable explanations. And then you get to step 4, the investigator's motto, verify with facts. And it's really important to know what that means. It does not mean you have a license to start snooping illegally or confronting someone without any proof. It's about finding objective information to either confirm or deny your suspicions in a calm, rational way. And really, that's what it all boils down to. That gut feeling you have that something is just off, it's often right. It's picking up on all these subtle shifts. But your gut feeling isn't proof. The professional move is to take that instinct and then go find some objective, factual evidence to back it up. And all of this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. When you see these patterns start to emerge, yeah, the immediate question might be about infidelity, but maybe the deeper, more important question is about what's happened to the very foundation of trust and honesty that any healthy relationship has to be built on. Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us.